for your attendance here today. Melissa says she cannot hear us.
Yeah, I think that'll be on her side. I think we
Yeah.
aren't having any audio issues for our webinar today. Unbaptized, why I left
Okay.
Christianity and returned to my roots. The I is Esther G, Srimati Esther Dhanraj. We are glad to be here with you today for this insightful and it's actually going to be pretty personal webinar, a conversation that's really inspired by Esther G's book, Unbaptized, Why I Left Christianity and Returned to My Roots. Esther G is our Director of Advancement at Hindu University of America. You've seen her at events and hosting and being a part of all sorts of HUA initiatives. But today in this webinar, we're going to actually just focus on Esther G's remarkable journey of transformation. She actually spent over 2 decades in evangelical Christianity. She earned a Master of Divinity in the US, and really to undertake a courageous process of scholarship, questioning, and self-inquiry that actually ultimately led her back to her Hindu roots. So in this discussion, we'll have Kalyanji join us shortly. But Esther G will reflect on the realities of religious conversion, the emotional challenges of leaving one faith for another, and the profound questions that arise around identity, tradition, and belonging. So, through this webinar, we'll explore what it means to rediscover one's cultural and spiritual heritage after years of separation, and how such a return can serve as both an act of truth and healing. This webinar goes beyond just Estrog's story, but it'll illuminate universal themes such as faith and doubt, home and alienation, modernity and tradition. We're going to invite you to participate and consider the deeper dimensions of spiritual identity in a globalized world and to encourage thoughtfully with the intersections of religion, culture, and personal freedom. So this is going to be an amazing webinar. Thank you everyone for joining. Please do share with us in the chat where you're zooming in from. We'll give you a shout out. We'll be sharing some links in the chat, including how you can get a hold of Esther book. An amazing piece of work. I've only started skimming it. I know some of you have already read it. But it is amazing. And thank you, Esther G, for joining HUA, giving us your vision, direction, bringing your story and making it a part of HUA's. And just really glad to have you on board and here for today's webinar. Also, we're glad to have Ravi G from Virginia, Hema G from San Diego. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's webinar. And with that, let me just hand it to Esther G to get us started, and we'll get Glanji on as well to help us engage in a thoughtful conversation. Esther G, let me hand it to you to get us started.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ankur. Yes, happy and lovely. And I think I would put it as the as our Swadharma to be working for HUA. Glad to be here at HUA and on this very webinar. Thank you all for joining once again. Really, really appreciate this time that you have taken to join us all here. And thank you for the wonderful introduction that Ankur just shared with you. Many of you here may be knowing my journey. I have shared it in bits and pieces with on several platforms in the video form, explainer videos, even my journey, my biography videos. But now I have come up with a book which is more coherent in how I can share my story. On videos, it's mostly bits and pieces, and to piece it together would take long hours of sitting and sifting through the videos to get a hold of what I'm trying to say. But a book is more permanent, more coherent, so that is why the need for this book now. It's called Unbaptized, Why I Left Christianity and Returned to My Roots, and it is published by Garuda Prakashan. And right now, I'm in India touring on my book tour, book launches. I've just been at Jaipur Dialogues, and then Sangam talks, and then at Varanasi, Kashi. So, yeah, with that, I just open this conversation and would love to share some insights into the what goes into conversions. Is conversions just the replacement of deity by another with another deity? Is it just extension of our beliefs, of our worldview, or is it more? And how my um, probably I would also be, I'm thinking I will have scope to share how my seminary, where I went to strengthen my Christian faith, actually ended up aiding in leaving the Christian faith and understanding and getting clarity of on my own faith. So with that, I hand it over to Ankur.
I've had a lot of chance to talk to you about this journey, and you've been working on this for like 10 years, right? It's a long-term process. Like you said, putting all these, your journey on paper. Can you just go through that journey a little bit on how you wrote the book, what inspired you, what brought you along, some barriers, and now, and then afterwards we can get into some of the reception.
Yeah, like Ankur, you just said, the book itself is 10 years in the making. And some of the the earliest portions of the earliest writings that made it into the book were written some 10 years ago, were collected over 10 years ago. But the book itself spans some 25 years of my own Christian life, and then the next 7 years of the unraveling of my faith and yeah, my exploration of other worldviews, and then my navigation into the Sanatan Vedic philosophy. So it's 10 years in the making. I won't reveal much about the whole journey that the book took, but I did try writing, bringing this book out back in 2014 itself. But then I think both the publishers and the readers were not ready for a story like this. But as we know, much has changed since 2015, 16, and now there is an environment to talk about these things. There is the atmosphere is perfect. The situation is ripe for having these discussions and delving into conversation about different worldviews, different religions, and conversions in particular. So here I am with the book. I have laid it out entirely in the introduction itself, why it took me so long, and why now, why am I writing this book now, and why a book at all. After I have shared my story on so many different platforms, why did I have to sit down and write a book? So I've described all of that in my book in the introduction itself. You should get a copy to know it in greater detail.
Yeah, and I just dropped a link to the book in the chat right there, Ketanji, right above your message. I see if I can add a QR code, but the link goes to Garuda Publishing. So you kind of touched on things have changed, right? And we know some of the things that have changed in the Hindu resurgence and all these other aspects in the development of consciousness, right? Of our internal understanding of the insider perspective. So maybe you can trace that a little bit and talk about what you think has really changed and why people are ready for your story now.
I think partly because of the Hindu Renaissance, or this whole awakening that has happened. Hindus are more vocal about what they think, and they're more vocal about their I think there is this resurgence, Hindu resurgence, call it Hindu Renaissance or Hindu reawakening or awakening, to reclaim their identity, their civilizational identity. So there are more conversations, there are more panel discussions, there are more academic conferences, which was not there earlier. And partly that is because of the current dispensation, also, I would say. There were not as many Indic conferences earlier on. So that kind of gave a space for these conversations, I would think. I will end it there. I will just give it a pause there to this particular aspect, like what changed after 2015, 2014. So I think it's a current dispensation, to put
Yeah,
it
and you're in India for the Jaipur Dialogues Summit, right? This kind of conference that actually does showcase and highlight and give a platform for this kind of conversation. Can you just share about your experience at the Jaipur Dialogue Summit? What happened? I know you were on, I think, two different panels, one for the book and one discussion. Maybe you can just share how that was and what you thought there.
Yeah, the theme of Jaipur Dialogue Summit was Shatrubodha. Shatrubodh. So a lot of times we are talking, mostly we are talking about our shastras, our self, Swayambodha. If you divide this whole knowledge uh, about in this realm, you can divide it into Swayambodha and Shatrubodha. So the theme of Jaipur Dialogue Summit was Shatrubodh. And to that effect, the conversations were also around religion, religious conversions, and Indic values. And a lot of conversations were about what to do in this situation, how to tackle the issue of the demography change, and what is the what actions could be taken on the ground, in academia, in the media, in constitution, in judiciary. So there were topics varying, covering all these topics. And the speaker lineup was also pretty impressive. There was Anand Ranganathan, there was Omendra Ratnu, there was Dr. Kundan Singh, Professor Bharat Gupt, Vibhudi Jha, Shifali Vaidya. So the speaker lineup was very impressive. There were people from politicians were there, people from the judiciary were there, like Vishnu Shankar Jain, and politicians like Nazia Ilahi Khan. Ex-Muslim Sahil was there. So the conversations were very, very charged, I would say. Some of them really vocal, and unapologetic display of emotions and thoughts. So it was a pretty good experience.
Yeah. Unapologetic. That's a very good word. I know we're gonna dig into it a little bit. And Kalyanji has joined president of HUA. Kalyanji is actually traveling, and thank you for joining us for this webinar. I know you read Esther book. You were even wrote one of the comments and affirmations. So Kalyanji, let me hand it to you. We just did a little bit of background. We didn't even get too deep into it, but you heard a little bit of Esther talking about the Jaipur dialogues, a little bit about the 10-year journey of writing the book. And we welcomed all of our guests. So, Kalyanji, glad to have you with
Great.
us to engage in this conversation and maybe share some
Yeah.
insights on how you read the book
Yeah.
and what you wanted to follow up and discuss
Sure.
with Esther.
Absolutely. I'd like to begin first of all by apologizing for missing the start of the webinar. I thought I was in Mountain Time, but I'm actually already in Pacific Time, and I thought I still had an hour, and I got a little mixed up. I'm glad I was able to recognize my error in sufficient time to join. Okay, so very, very quick apologies on that. So Esther is now, she's part of Hindu University of America. She's the director of advancement at HUA, and she's shouldering a very big responsibility for HUA. But today we are going to speak about her book, and so we can go. We're going to engage with her as an author. And Esther, I assume you already mentioned your book title and so on, right? Already to the
Yes,
audience. Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
we
Good.
did.
Okay. Very good. So I would like to begin this discussion with recalling a small pamphlet, maybe a few pages, not very long, but a booklet that I read about 25 years ago. That was authored by Swami Dayananda Saraswati of Arshavidya Gurukulam. And the title of that booklet was very simply Conversion is Violence. Conversion is Violence. That was his title of the book. Now, when I picked up that book, I wasn't quite entirely with him. I wondered what makes conversion violence, an act of violence, and after all, any liberal-minded person would recognize that an honest change of view, change of perspective, change of allegiance, change of religion in a person's life is one of the legitimate possibilities of our human existence. We all can change our religions, change our opinions, change our worldviews, and so on. So, why was it an act of violence? Well, when I actually read through the little booklet, the case that he made was quite simply that conversion essentially attacks and unsettles the transmission of traditions from generation to generation. It cleavages families, it cuts us under, it puts people on two different sides: those who accept, those who decline, those who are upset that somebody, a very close person, converted in their families, and so on. And I slowly began to understand his argument. It was not violent in the sense of committing an act of violence against an individual, but it was violence against cultures, violence against civilization, violence against tradition, violence against the transmission of knowledge from generation to generation to generation, and the custodianship of knowledge and traditions that each generation has in their hands and are responsible for their appropriate transmission to future generations. And conversion breaks that. Okay. So now Esther Dhanraj is someone who has experienced this viscerally, deeply, personally. She has gone through a whole experience of how conversion has impacted her personally, her families, her parents, her extended siblings. So it's a tremendous tale, and that's one part of the book that she has written. And I'd like to invite Esther Ji to offer a few comments on this question. What has happened in your family and your traditions, and how has this saga impacted you and your family personally? Okay, please.
Yeah, see, the way conversion actually works is not the conversion in the fairy tale version that you hear in church testimony videos, but the real psychological, social, and emotional process on the ground. And I mean, I think as I speak, many of you will recognize these patterns maybe from your own neighborhoods, or from when you were in school or college, your extended families, or maybe even your homes, because nowadays I see that every family has one family member, some extended family member, or very next of their kin getting converted. Now, conversions don't start with the deity or the Christian deity, Jesus, but I would say they rather start with pain. They don't begin with theology. Conversions begin with a small crack in the human life when a human being is going through a rough patch in life, going through a crisis. And missionaries, whether they are formally trained or they're just lay evangelists who could be your classmates, your colleagues, they are taught to look for pain They can smell a serious illness in their neighbor's family due to debt or a job loss or addiction or domestic conflict. It could be a death in the family or loneliness, caste-based discrimination, and they're always looking for people who are already, I would say, on their knees, suffering,
Vulnerable,
painful,
you mean, vulnerable.
vulnerable. Yes, yes. So, see, you will never, almost never see them, the missionaries, invest their time and their energy in strong, cohesive, stable, confident individuals who are, say, intellectually grounded Hindus, or even, financially secure or socially rooted people. Why is that so? Because those people that are strongly intellectually grounded don't respond easily to miracle promises. They don't need a miracle in their life. So missionaries don't even bother to go to people like that. And that is why overwhelming majority of conversions happen in crisis, because crisis, I would say, is the biggest enemy of clarity. When a person is in crisis, there is no clarity of anything, in fact, much less about their identity or their civilizational roots. So a door is opened by pain that a person goes through, when a person is going through pain. And philosophy has no place when a person is going through pain. And I would say the most powerful tool in conversions is not the Bible or its theology, but it's the timing. That's exactly what happened with my parents. And
So,
nine out of
Esther ji, so you were born in a traditional Hindu family based in Andhra Pradesh, right? Vishakhapatnam. I mean, just say a little bit about the background, and then you can proceed with the story.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
yes, I was born in Vishakhapatnam, but my family never lived in Vishakhapatnam while I was a child. They moved to Bhubaneswar, Odisha now. And during that time, my father, my parents, I mean, my household, my family was a very conservative Hindu family. Conservative in the sense, very ritualistic. My father was a Gayatri Upasak. My mother used to do ratams every day of the week. My grandmother had her whole puja mandir very well decorated. There was that Vyaspeeth on which there was a Srimad Bhagavatam open always, and she used to read from it all through the day and tell us stories. So that was the kind of atmosphere at our home. And when everything was going on well, my father just had to resign from his job, a very well paying job. And that was the same time that my mother had to undergo a surgery. Nothing challenging, or not a life threatening surgery. It was a just regular surgery. But when all this was going on, and my family was very huge, with four other siblings, two dogs, my grandmother living with us, it was a quite big household. And in the middle of all this, we had a Christian neighbor. And like I said, they are trained to smell crisis in their in Hindu homes, their neighboring Hindu homes. And this person who was living next door got a whiff of what was happening in my family. And then he saw the door left ajar, and he just walked right in, and he started pouring into the cracks that he saw in our family his Christian message.
So
And
so Esther ji, how old were you then at that time?
I was about
12 years
12
old.
years old.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, when my family was exposed to Christianity.
Right. And what was the specific crisis, just in one or two sentences, that your family went through at that time?
So my father had to resign his job due to some office politics. and he was pretty young. He could have found another job. But when you're an upper middle class family, and then it's just about you don't have many savings because they were also just starting off, and not many savings. So they were suddenly thrown off balance. And that was the time my mother had to have go through a surgery. Like I said, not every Hindu who goes through a crisis gets converted to Christianity, because my parents did definitely go through like other middle class families. They also went through other crises before this particular crisis, but they did not convert at those times. So what is the difference? The difference is you having a Christian for a neighbor when you are going through a bad phase in life, because Christian missionaries almost always arrive before your own relatives or your own Hindu friends arrive, because we are not trained to do that. We are not trained to just go barge into somebody's lives and say, hey, you know what, you have to go to the temple, you have to do this homa. We don't do that unless we are asked. But missionaries are trained to do that, whether a lay evangelist or a career evangelist.
Right. So
So that's how this person entered our lives.
so it's an intervention, basically.
Yeah. And they're trained to intervene, whether
Right.
they're asked for it or not.
So I will share one quick episode from my wife's life. When she was a student in her first year in college at CMC Vellore, Christian Medical College Vellore, when she was 18 years old, her father passed away, and she went through a massive crisis. And lo and behold, there was immense pressure on her to get converted to Christianity. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And she managed to resist it, okay? She didn't convert. But let's fast forward, Esther ji. So your family converted, and then, just quickly, in a few sentences, tell the story of what happened in your family, how it
So it
divided the
was
family. Yeah.
Yeah, it was first my parents who got converted, got baptized, I would say. So that's a long process. It didn't happen in a way that, I'm like in two sentences. It was a process, and I have laid it out in great detail in my book. Like we moved soon after my mother's surgery, we moved from Bhubaneswar to Hyderabad, where my mother's side of the family were all well settled. And there was a whole church there. In Bhubaneswar, it was just a lay evangelist who used to do a day job in telco. But in Hyderabad, it was a whole church ecosystem that started intervening and started praying for my mother, for my father, and that's how they ended up. The pressure led them to get baptized eventually. And after my parents got baptized, they did not impose their changed faith on their children. They were just as liberal Christians as they were liberal progressive Hindus, which makes them actually bad Christians, because they failed to impose their beliefs on their children, which is why each of my siblings and we got converted at different times in our lives for different reasons. So my memoir, my autobiography has 7 conversion stories, each one different from the other. The motivation to get converted are 7 different motivations. And I've talked about all of them. And if you look at the conversions happening today in India, all of these conversions could fall somewhere in between these 7 categories, 7 different reasons for converting. So, which is why it was so important for me to tell the stories of each of my siblings. And so from there, my parents, even though they became Christians, my mother still held on to her identity. She never really could master the jargon. She could never pray the Christian way. Even when she was asked by the pastor to pray, which is what the pastors do, because they want you to practice and perfect the art of praying. And when she prayed, it seemed like she was chanting mantras. So she maintained the same meter that that mantras have. So she could never master the prayer. So, and she used to say the same words in a loop, so which means her vocabulary was very limited. And my father also was very particular about a few things. For example, my grandmother was still a Hindu to her dying day, which was years after my parents got converted. And she had her puja mandir, and the pastors actually pressured my father to get it removed. But my father said that will stay, and it's not for discussion, it's not up for discussion. And it stayed to my grandmother's dying day. And my mother never changed her identity. She still had her Hindu, all Hindu identity, glass bangles, bindi and sindoor, all of that. Even though my parents were initiated into the what Pentecostalism, the look of is kind of more because they wear white and there is no color on their body. And, my mother refused to change any of that. So that was Christianity for us. I would say we were very, very different Christians than words these days, but Christianity got to my siblings and me more than it did to my parents, which is how I became the next 25 years of my life. From the time I was introduced to Christianity, I evolved into a fanatical, fundamentalist, Christian. And I was willing to even dedicate my entire life for evangelism and for spreading the word of God.
So that took you to the seminary in Atlanta,
Exactly.
right?
Yes.
So you
Yes.
actually went through a Master of Divinity program in Atlanta Seminary, in
Yes.
and with an intention to develop yourself as a effective spokesperson, ambassador, evangelical personality on behalf of Christianity, right?
Exactly.
Great. Okay. Now I want to move forward. One of the episodes in your book that struck me very deeply was the conversation you had with your father when he was about to pass away. And it was one of the most very, I would say, well written, uh, deeply vulnerable, deeply biographical, and at the same time a theological discussion between father and daughter, and very moving. I was really moved and touched by that particular episode in your book, and I'd like to encourage all the people in the audience to buy her book and read it, because it's a terrific story. Now, Esther J, I want to take you back to those days with your father when he was about to pass away, and just give us some glimpses from the discussions that you had with him. What was his state of mind? What was your state of mind? And what you spoke about for days at it. It was several days, right, when you were together
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the hospital.
For
Yeah,
15
please.
days. Yeah,
15
yeah.
days. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Actually, this was the hardest part of my story to write.
Mm,
Um, One, because he's not there anymore to defend himself. So I had to be very careful in what I shared and how accurately and honestly I shared that part of the story. But leaving it out would actually betray both my father and the truth. And also, there was so much, like you said, Kalyanji, there was so much theology in it. His doubts expressed in the form of, it was a theological discourse. Now, when I look back at it, I never felt it at that moment when I was there conversing with him. But later on, when I look back at it, it's a theological discourse, actually, comparative religion, if you actually look at
mhm.
it, the way
Yeah.
he was asking questions. And it was shocking that for all his life, from the conversation, I realized that he never believed in the Christian message. And he lived his life with the regret that he could not, survive the pressure, both from his own family and the whole church ecosystem. And even on his deathbed, he held on to reason. He held on to dignity and that kind of quiet courage. All these qualities that actually defined who he was. He was a very loved man. He was very honored, all his life. But then he had a great understanding of the Puranas, understanding of the Hindu philosophy, and he knew it in his bones, I would say. But he didn't have the vocabulary to counter the onslaught of Christianity. So after converting to Christianity, this humorous, this witty person who had so much knowledge about his own roots, he fell into an unusual silence. And he had COPD in his final days, in his hospitalization. He was suffering from acute phlegm in his throat, and he was on oxygen, but he still managed to talk. His reason still strong. And I was in my very first semester of my theological studies in the US. And when I was called home, I was in the US then, and I was called to India. And when I went, I got to spend a lot of time with him because everybody else was working and they were busy, all my siblings. So I got to spend a lot of time with him, sitting by him and talking to him. So one of the first things the whole conversation went on for 15 days. It's a very small conversation, but because of his condition, he couldn't speak continuously, and it went on. So the first thing he asked me is, so am I going to the Christian hell or heaven? And I said, why would you say that? So then he says, I have put your God in a dilemma. So he always said your God. Even to the pastors, he would say your God. So he said, I put your God in a dilemma. Would he now send me to the Christian hell because I'm doubting? Or would he send me to the Christian heaven because I've converted 6 other people and I should be crowned, given the crown of glory? So now your God is completely confused, right? I successfully confused him, and he started laughing. Then that started, a back and forth questioning, and he expressed his regret of not visiting his mother in her last days, because they were first, my parents had just converted to Christianity, and my grandmother fell ill. And when my father's brother sent my father a note to attend, come see her, the pastor discouraged my father from doing so. He said, you would have to participate in the rituals. You would have to wear your genou back, and God is going to be God is a jealous God. The Christian God is a jealous God, apparently, and he's going to be very angry, and you are going to be in eternal hell. The fear, how fear works. They weaponize that fear. That's one of the techniques of Christianity. So the pastor dissuaded, and my father finally gave in to the pressure, because when my father started debating with the pastor, they got to my mother, the emotional one. And she stopped my father from going because she was scared. And she said, long story short, my father ended up not going to the funeral, and he carried that guilt for the rest of his life, to the end of his days. And that is where that conversation went. And he said, I regret, I have lived with this regret. So we went back and forth about, prarabdha karma, agami karma, sanchita karma, which he compared with everything Christianity says, the original sin, the salvation, and all of that. So that's a great conversation. I would not be doing justice by trying to fit it into 2 or 3 minutes here on this webinar, but I would really encourage all of you to read that. That is a good counter for you to have. That's a good language for you all to be equipped with, in your own Shatru Bodha and Swayam Bodh.
Yeah. So, Esther ji, so couple of quick things here. Okay. One is that your father was doubting all the way to his final moment on the earth, right? He was doubting his own conversion. He was wondering whether he had done the right thing, and he was filled with regret for having not been stronger during his own moments of vulnerability, and ended up converting his whole family. But at that moment you were defending Christianity with him, right? You are a powerful voice for the righteousness of Christianity. Say a few sentences about your own state of mind at that moment.
So, see, for long, I believed that my ancestors were burning in hell. I believed it with all my heart, very sincerely, which is why I went to the seminary. That I had that, the Christian burden, like they say, the white man's burden, that savior complex, that Christian burden, because of which I went to the seminary. But when my father was in the same state, I was terrified. I was completely terrified that here is a man who gave up so much, risked everything, his family's his relationships, his reputation, so much of trauma he went through, and became a Christian. And here in his last days, I just couldn't let his doubt to take shape, and I didn't want him to die in that doubt. Somehow I thought that in his last days I would change his entire understanding and entire belief, and convert his doubt into hardcore belief, and send him to his
Be-
onward journey to heaven.
because doubt is the work of the devil, right, in the
Yeah,
Christian
doubt is the
theology.
work of the devil. Yeah.
Right.
So I couldn't let devil take him away to hell forever
Mm.
after him giving up so much to just be Christian. So he wanted a daughter. He wanted a daughter to console him and give him some clarity, but I would not budge from being a theologian. And that's what I became to him on his deathbed. And I countered it, knowing that he had better reason, he had better argument, and I was clearly losing it, but I wouldn't give up, right? Because Satan was clearly stealing his soul on his deathbed, and I couldn't let that happen. Yeah, we went back and forth. If you read the argument, I just cannot believe that it was me arguing with so much, absurdity and lack of logic in my argument. And he was so full of reason and to the point. So that
Yeah.
was a good conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and in fact, I would say it's. I mean, for me, in reading the book, that dialogue between father and daughter while his in the last 2 weeks of his life before he passed away is clearly one of the highlights of the book, because it's so raw and so honest and so vulnerable. It was really fantastic, and Esther ji, really congratulations on producing a really authentic account of a very difficult period of your life. Now, let's fast forward a little bit. One of the things that happened was, after that conversation with your father, when you were playing junior Christian theologian and trying to persuade him that his conversion was actually the right action on his part, and he just had to believe, and he just had to somehow exorcise these self doubts that he was having about his own conversion to Christianity. You went through your own period of doubt yourself, and interestingly, it happened in the seminary for you. And you had been a practicing Christian for how long then? 20 years almost.
And 25 years.
25 years. And after that, after your father's passing, in the seminary in Atlanta, as you were going through the program, the Masters in Divinity program in Christian apologetics, as you're building up your own repertoire of arguments to defend Christianity against attacks from, you know, doubting people around the world, right? Suddenly you went through your own phase of deep doubt, and which resulted eventually in your returning back to Hinduism. Okay, now tell us the story, the theological struggle that you went through in the seminary, which led you slowly led you out of Christianity and back to Hinduism? In a few minutes,
Yeah,
please. Yeah.
yeah, that's the most, I would say, extraordinary twist in my journey. Uh, I entered the seminary to become a stronger Christian. Like I said, I believed my ancestors were burning in hell, and I had this responsibility of not just towards my ancestors, but also towards entire my country and all the idol worshippers of this country. They were damned to hell, and I had that burden to save them. I had to, at some point, come back to India and Christianize India. So I entered the seminary thinking that I would be a stronger Christian, will be in a better position to defend Christianity against the criticisms that Hinduism were, that it was being subjected to at the hands of Hindus. And I walked out of seminary, no longer being able to remain a Christian. That is what the twist is. And it wasn't a crisis of emotion. It wasn't rebellion. I wasn't angry at anything. There was no emotion at all. It was simply information about Christianity, exposure to the truth about Christian doctrines, its history, its scripture. All of this information led to clarity. Now, how did this information happen in seminary? It never happened when I was a pew member. I was sitting in church listening to pastors' sermons. Now, that is the crux of this whole, it's a twist inside the twist. So, as a seminary student, I was given to I was given to examine Christianity. As long as I was a Christian, a faithful Christian devotee, a devoted Christian, I could only feel Christianity. In seminary, I was given to examine it. So it was like moving your faith from your head into your head, from your heart into your head. Now, if that makes sense. So examining Christianity actually pushed the faith from my heart, and I started thinking with my head, not feeling it anymore. For the first time, I had to confront contradictions, historical inconsistencies, doctrinal evolutions, its political motives, and the manner in which the whole Christian Bible came into existence. For me as a Christian, I was told that the Bible was the inerrant, infallible word of God that came to mankind through a revelation of God, from God. So in my mind, it was like every other Christian's mind. Bible came to us in one piece. It fell from heaven in one piece. That is the understanding. At least that's how Christianity may not say it in that many words, but that is how it is made to, Christians are made to feel. So when I saw that, that claim or that belief against what I was experiencing at the seminary. So to be very precise, to point to that moment in my seminary journey when a doubt triggered, is when I first took my very first course in the very first semester. It's called the Survey of the Old Testament. And I loved Old Testament because I like history. And Old Testament is supposed to be the beginning of the race, mankind, beginning of races and all that. And Old Testament mentions a dozen ancient races. And even as a Christian, I had no doubt that the Indian civilization is the ancient most civilization, and Indic wisdom had contributed greatly to the world. I had no doubt in believing these two things, even though I was told otherwise. So in those dozen races, I was looking for my own race. And then I concluded that either of these things, either of these reasons, because of either of these two reasons, there is no mention of the Indian race. One, God must be probably hating the Indian race so much for being idolaters that he didn't even think them worthy of mention in the Bible. Two, probably I'm unable to interpret because I don't have the academic grounding in theology, which is why I ended up in the seminary. So I took the Old Testament course. maybe thinking that, oh, maybe now I will be taught how to interpret, and then maybe I can see that cryptic mention of my race, the Indian race, the Hindu race. So when I read the book, it's by a theologian. It's by a very famous theologian, reputed American theologian, Norman Geisler. He says that the Bible consists of errors and inconsistencies, but, and he goes on to defend for the rest of the book. Because this is a course in apologetics, my track of study in the seminary is apologetics, which is the defense of the Christian claims, theology, history, scripture, everything against criticism. So, but my site just stopped at the Bible has inconsistencies and errors. I could not focus on what was told, what was on the other side of that word but. So then I'm like, how can there be errors and inconsistencies in the revelation given by God? And that was one part. That was when the doubt started. And when I read the argument, the doubt just strengthened. Instead of the apologetic argument clearing my doubt strengthened, became more stable and consistent. What he said, what the theologian said is, the inconsistencies and the errors crept into the Bible through translations and edited versions, through editing. Scribal errors. The Bible, the Christianity calls it scribal errors. Now that made me wonder, the all-knowing God should have known that in 20th century, lesser mortals like me would be reading from the erroneous Bible. And why wasn't he present in the scribe's room? Why wasn't he present in the translations like he was present in the original revelation, during the original revelation? And if he allowed errors to creep into the Bible through translations, what was the whole point of giving an inerrant word? So this was, in short, the beginning of my doubt. And then, interestingly, the order in which I took courses at the seminary really helped in the slow unraveling of my faith piece by piece. First went the Bible. Next was the God of the Bible, Jehovah. And third was Jesus himself. So piece by piece, layer by layer, my faith got peeled, and until
So,
it completely collapsed.
so SG, see, I mean, we have to recognize that your experience is not the normal experience. So most people who go to the seminary from the Christian, within the Christian faith, they end up with an MDiv degree or a Doctor of Theology or Masters, whatever, they end up with degrees that actually reinforce their faith and reinforce their commitment to evangelize and convert and practice their faith, isn't it? So therefore your experience was quite unusual in that regard, that divinity school actually ended up undermining your faith, and you ended up on a different trajectory, slowly finding your way back to Sanatana Dharma. So you have any thoughts about this?
So I wouldn't say it's completely unusual, because
Mm,
we have a lot of people who went to the
mm,
seminary coming out as non-Christians or disillusioned,
mm,
either by the theology itself or by church,
mm,
disillusioned of the church. Now, the best example is Charles Templeton. Charles
mm,
Templeton is the founder of the world's largest Christian network Christian organization, Youth for Christ. And he was a mate of Billy Graham, the most famous evangelist in Christian history, who basically converted all of Africa, most of Americas, and most of Asia. So Billy Graham and Charles Templeton together founded Youth for Christ, and Charles Templeton went to seminary for the same reasons. And I have again gone into great detail about on the parallel between his experience and my experience. He went to the seminary thinking that He didn't have good academic grounding in theology, so he needed to go to the seminary to counter his own doubts, personal doubts. And the story of creation story in Genesis actually threw him off, and he said, "This doesn't make sense." And he discussed it with his mate, Billy Graham, and they both agreed that, okay, doubts are there. There are difficulties. We can't reconcile faith with, truth, science, and reality. But Templeton chose to leave the faith after his seminary, after graduating from seminary. And Billy Graham chose to continue with the doubt and became the world's biggest evangelist and the most successful evangelist. So it's not that Christians don't go through doubt, they do, but it's only the only difference is what they choose to do with that doubt. That is, I would put it that way. Even Teresa of Calcutta, who is known as Mother Teresa, she combated doubt all her life. And there is a whole a whole biography, which is a compilation of her letters expressing her doubt and her lack of faith to her Vatican masters. So yes, doubt is a big part of Christian life.
Yeah, and doctrinally speaking, the Christian approach is to keep insisting that doubt is a work of the devil, and we should not entertain it. We should somehow extinguish it. And if only you became a more faithful Christian, then
Correct.
all the doubts will disappear, and so on. And obviously, one of the ways Hinduism is very different is that it allows you a lot of freedom in questioning and engaging, interpreting, looking for what you like, what you prefer, avoiding what you don't like. There's so much variety to choose from, and you're not doctrinally conditioned, and so on and so forth. Now, see, I think I want to make some closing remarks. We're almost at the top of the hour. Esther's life is a very unusual life, very unusual. And like I say, it's a one in a billion kind of life, uh, because see, there are stories of people converting from Hinduism to Christianity and from many other traditions to Christianity. And, I'd like to answer Sue's question. Sue, who's Suan? Uh, Suan, yeah. So, you see, there is really no problem from a Hindu perspective. There is no problem in allowing, enabling, coexisting many different forms of religion, forms of worship, forms of prayer, many different languages. There's no problem with that. Okay, Hinduism itself is very versatile and diverse in that regard. But the relentless pressure to convert the whole world into Christianity is something absolutely extraordinary, and Christianity has been successful. It has converted the whole world, Americas, Africa, parts of, almost the whole of South America. It's converted. And we Hindus experience it in every possible way, constantly within not only in the Indian subcontinent, but also elsewhere in the world. So that's the granting of freedom, to pursue practice is one thing, but the pressure to convert and then criticize your ancestral traditions, to avoid your ancestral traditions, to destroy, to cut off any contact with your previous generations, cut off from other members of your community who are still Hindu, to really cause an intentional cleavage in the family, the extended family, and so on. That's unusual behavior in Christianity, and that's one of the things that Swamiji was very particular about when he wrote that tract called Conversion is Violence. Now, I'd like to close the webinar. I know you have lots of questions. A lot of you have many, many questions, and I think it'd be very great for you to read her book. The story, the what makes this story exceptional and unusual is that she got converted. That's not so great. I mean, a lot of people, millions of people are converting around the world. But then she went to a seminary to become a very serious Christian. And I mean, that's a small percentage. Most Christians don't try to become seminarians. They don't try to get a master's in divinity degree. They don't try to become theologians, etc. But Esther did, and she went to college. And not only she went to college, she completed her degree, right? The whole 4.5 years. That's unusual. But what's even more spectacularly unusual is that her seminary experience resulted in her eventually returning back to Hinduism. And I think that makes her one of the most unique people on the planet. I can hardly think of anybody else like that who's been able to investigate Christianity so intensely, intellectually in a seminary, and then return back to Hinduism. Her original given name was Kamakshi, and of course, she carries the name Esther for convenience because that's who she became when she was young. But Esther, we are very happy that you're back with us and playing an important role at Hindu University of America. And I'd encourage everybody on this webinar to get a copy of her book and read it. It's a terrific account and worthwhile reading because I'm sure all of you know somebody in your families, or your extended families or neighbors who's caught in a moment of vulnerability and are experiencing immense pressure to convert to Christianity at the most vulnerable moment in their lives. Okay, that's a common experience, and let's be a little more aware of what happens with this intense, immense pressure to convert. Okay, so Ankur, can you put up the location where people can get a copy of the book, and then we will close the webinar. There are a few questions in the Q&A box. Esther, if you want to take them up, you can take them up one by one. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I was just thinking that, yeah, most of these questions cannot be answered in one or two sentences. That would actually take away the essence of the whole answer and the question also. So I'm happy to engage on via email. So please reach out to me at esther.dhanraj@hua.edu or esther.dhanraj@gmail.com. So I'm happy to answer your questions. These are some wonderful questions, and lot of learning can happen. Both you and I can learn. People that are asking the questions, and I can learn from the answers themselves. So please feel free to reach out, and I'll be happy to engage in a conversation with you.
Okay, great. Thank you everyone for joining. What an amazing conversation. Kalanji, thank you for drawing those questions and answers out of SRG. I think a lot of people really appreciate it. Sorry we can't get into the deeper conversation to answer your questions as SRG said, but please email her. We'll do follow-ups. We'll have conversations. Join the Friends of HUA. This is our initiative where SRG and I are leading to have more of these conversations, bring people like SRG into your community to have these important conversations around Hinduism. Faculty can come and all sorts of other opportunities we have. Ike, do we want to take some questions from the audience or do we want to put that for
I,
next time?
I am going to drop out. Okay, because I have something to attend to. But Esther, you're free to continue and answer all the questions to the extent you're willing. Okay, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay,
All
I'm
right.
going to
Thank
drop
you,
out.
Kalanji. I'll see you in LA shortly.
Sure. Yeah. Bye bye.
Yeah, Sergi, if you want to take a look through some of the questions, some of the comments, if you have a little bit of time, whatever kind of closing thoughts and way to incorporate people's engagement. And also, again, what we're doing at HUA is taking all of this and directing it towards actionable items, towards different initiatives, towards, again, sharing this information and making it accessible. So, Sergi, maybe you want to talk on that a little bit.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, so and this is not the essence of Christianity. Jesus did not teach this. Indians, Europeans, Africans have suffered much from the violence of Islam. You can say no to the missionaries, but Islam forced its religion or killed you. Why not say something about that? So, and if you read the history, of Christianity, the Christian church, before the advent of Islam. Islam is doing exactly what Christianity is doing today. So, in a way, Islam actually learned all this from the church itself. Jesus did not teach this, sure, but he did not even put a stop to it, right? So the church had killed more people. It has colonized more lands than Islam did, right? So Islam is getting there. Given enough time, Islam will beat Christianity. But Christianity mellowed down after all those atrocities on indigenous cultures. Again, this is another topic I have gone into great detail in my book. You should really read it. But there is also another wonderful book by Catherine Nixie. It is called The Darkening Age. Darkening Age is a fantastic account of all the cultures that Christianity annihilated, and all the indigenous cultures, and all the mass genocide that it engaged in, and the colonization, right? What is doctrine of discovery? What is slavery? So the dominion theology. So it's not like Christianity did not engage in the kind of activity that we see from Islam today. Christianity finished doing all that, and Islam has taken their task, and it's taking it to a whole aggressive level.
Yeah, very good. Madhu Hebarji is reminding me we're in Los Angeles. We're organizing our second Samvad, an ongoing dialogue, and Esther G is going to be a panelist there talking about this in person as part of our ongoing series of fundraisers, events, initiatives that the Friends of HUA is undertaking. So if you're in California, I dropped the link right there. Madhuji, thank you for the reminder. And if you're interested in organizing an event, inviting Esther G to speak in depth in your community, I'd be happy to set that up, and are looking for more opportunities to share these kinds of conversations and discussions. It's been really amazing. Thank you everyone for your comments and questions. And
Yeah,
yeah, Esther G, let me hand it to you.
Poonamji.
That's it from me. Thank you everyone. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Poonamji, you asked where to buy in USA. It's available on Amazon.com for the US, and Amazon.in for India. So it's available on Amazon. You can get it from there.
Okay. And maybe just end on what else are you looking forward to working with HUA, taking this message forward? What's on the horizon for you and for HUA working together?
What is it, Ankur? Sorry.
Just what's on the horizon? What are we doing at HUA? How are we plugging in? Invite people to participate, and then maybe some closing positive thoughts.
Yeah, I think you already said it. Friends of HUA, the fantastic way of engaging with HUA. And please remember that, I was just hoping to touch a little bit about on the solutions to what is going on, and as my ongoing war against coercive conversions, not just conversions, but coercive, manipulative conversions that are taking place on the ground in India and everywhere else. Building institutions, especially academic institutions, is the only solution, because that's the only way you can instill pride of being, pride of our civilizational identity as Bharatiyas, as Hindus. The only way to do that in our youth is by instilling that confidence, intellectual confidence in them, and intellectual confidence will come only through the academic engagement with our texts and traditions, with our our Sanskriti, our culture, our civilization, our history, our philosophy. So all those things, to academically engage with all those things, we need academic institutions, and that is exactly what HUA is doing, and that is exactly what drew me to HUA, because I have an academic experience in Christian studies, and I know how academics help in instilling that pride in a student. So I would really request all of you to continue your support of HUA, and Friends of HUA is a great way to step into the HUA universe.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Esther G. Really appreciate it. Namaste.
Thank
Dhanyawad.
you, Uncle. Thank you all for joining. Namaste.